This source provides a narrative framework for an investigative documentary regarding the mysterious absence of Google's Gemini 3.5 Pro.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are digging into a genuinely fascinating AI mystery. Just picture this for a second. You're looking inside a massive Google AI data center, right? Servers are humming, the blue lights are blinking. It's just this immense infrastructure powering the future. And out of this absolute powerhouse, Google just dropped Gemini 3.7 Flash, which is this model heavily focused on coding and agentic business workflows. But there's a massive elephant in the room here. Their highly anticipated flagship model, Gemini 3.5 Pro, is still completely missing in action. There is literally no public launch date. This creates such a bizarre situation in the tech world because Google is aggressively pushing forward with newer, specialized models, while the big 3.5 Pro flagship that everyone's been waiting for seems to have just vanished into the shadows. So what exactly could this mean? Well, let's figure it out. Okay, to really understand this mystery, we actually have to rewind a bit back to May at Google I/O 2026. This was a huge event. Google proudly introduced Gemini 3.5 Flash and stated right there on stage that Gemini 3.5 Pro was already being used internally. The expectation they set was super clear. We were going to see a 3.5 Pro rollout the very next month, in June. But June came and went, then July passed, and the status was completely frozen. And now we find ourselves in August, and 3.5 Pro is still missing. I want to be perfectly clear about this. Google has not announced that the 3.5 Pro project is canceled. Officially, it's still just coming soon. But, as those deadlines passed, that timeframe undeniably slipped. Now, what is truly wild about all of this is the sheer velocity of Google's other releases. While the flagship has been totally frozen, Google absolutely hasn't stood still. Far from it. They rolled out Gemini 3.6 Flash, then came Gemini 3.5 Flashlight, then a highly specialized Gemini 3.5 Flash Cyber, and now, seemingly out of nowhere, Gemini 3.7 Flash. Google just keeps pushing forward, accelerating their rollout with these highly specialized Flash models. The releases aren't slowing down. They're actually speeding up. So this glaring contradiction really forces us to stop and ask a pretty critical question here. Why? Why on earth are newer Gemini models moving forward so rapidly while the flagship Gemini 3.5 Pro is still delayed? Is this just, normal, if slightly messy, product development in a fast-paced industry? Or is Google quietly shifting its entire AI strategy behind closed doors? We aren't going to jump to conclusions just yet. Let's piece together the clues first. All right, let's dive into part 1, why Gemini Pro matters and its flagship positioning. To truly grasp the stakes of this delay, we have to establish why missing a Pro-tier launch is such a big deal. Because delaying a flagship is very, very different from delaying some minor experimental model. You see, there's this massive divide within the Gemini family. Think of it like this. The Flash models are built for pure speed, extreme efficiency, and targeted automation. They're your fast, lightweight workers. But the missing Pro model? That represents Google's flagship positioning. It's designed for the absolute heavy lifting, difficult reasoning, complex knowledge work, massive, long context tasks. It's meant to be the true competitor to the biggest models on the market. So when you delay the Pro model, you are essentially sidelining your heavyweight champion. And as you probably know, according to current reporting across the industry, modern coding performance is quite literally one of the hardest tests for AI right now. It is no longer just about spitting out a quick Python script. Modern coding agents need to understand massive entire code bases, plan complex multi-step changes, modify multiple files simultaneously, run the tests, interpret the errors, debug, iterate, and do all of this over long-running tasks without losing their train of thought. For developers who rely on Google's ecosystem, you just can't fake competence in this kind of deep coding work. If a flagship model struggles with these intense debugging and iterating tasks, pushing it out too early could severely damage Google's competitive position. And this intense requirement perfectly mirrors the broader agent race we're seeing. Goal, plan, act, verify. We are right in the middle of a massive shift in how AI operates. We're moving way beyond a simple ask a question, get an answer dynamic. The future is autonomous agents that independently operate software and automate real business workflows. It all comes down to this 4-step loop: goal, plan, act, verify. The fact that the newly released Gemini 3.7 Flash is so heavily focused on coding and these exact workflows proves that Google is fully committed to this agentic direction. Which brings up a really fascinating alternative way to look at this delay. What if the model number itself isn't actually the real story here? I mean, we tend to think of software as a simple ladder, right? Version 3.5 to 3.6 to 3.7, and eventually you hit 4.0. But Google, they might not be building a ladder at all. They might be building an ecosystem. In this ecosystem, you have Flash for raw speed, Pro for deep reasoning, Cyber for dedicated security, and maybe others for multimodal creative stuff. If it's an ecosystem rather than a ladder, well, the absence of one specific model number might just mean that specific tool isn't ready for the toolbox yet. I mean, just think about Google's unprecedented scale for a second. Search, Android, Chrome, Gmail, YouTube, Maps, Cloud. Google doesn't exist in a vacuum, and they don't just need a fun chatbot to generate poems for people. They need a reliable, absolutely bulletproof intelligence layer to power this massive list of established platforms that billions of people use every single day. Their underlying model strategy is literally make or break for the future of all of these products. Let's move into part 2, the competitive AI race, specifically looking at OpenAI and Anthropic. Because as massive as Google is, the competitive pressure they're facing from rivals is intense, and it's accelerating fast. The AI race waits for nobody. The central tension in the industry right now is basically a clash of totally different strategies. On one side, you have Google's unmatched distribution scale and their deep ecosystem integration. But on the flip side, you have competitors moving at just breakneck speed. OpenAI has this relentless AI-first momentum, constantly pushing models toward deeper reasoning and workplace automation. And right alongside them, you have Anthropic's Claude just dominating coding workflows and computer-use tasks. The race has shifted entirely. It's no longer who can answer the question the fastest. The new race is who can complete the complex task. And that makes Google's flagship strategy incredibly high stakes. So this puts Google in the ultimate strategic dilemma: delay versus danger. On the one hand, a flagship model that isn't ready simply shouldn't be released just because a calendar says it's time. A weak release can completely damage your reputation, shatter developer confidence, and ruin user adoption. So Google might strongly prefer a delay over a massive disappointment. But the danger there is that the target keeps moving. Every single month of delay allows OpenAI to improve, Anthropic to improve, and even open weight models to catch up. A model that was highly competitive in May might actually look pretty ancient by September. And just adding an extra layer of intrigue to all this, recent reports suggest a pretty significant leadership shift over at Google DeepMind. Dimas Hassabis has transitioned from day-to-day leadership into a chairman and chief scientist role, while Kore Kavoucioglu has stepped in to take on greater operational responsibility. Now, let me be very clear, this is absolutely not proven causation for the 3.5 Pro delay. Leadership changes happen for a million reasons at big tech companies. But as analysts, you gotta admit, the timing is certainly interesting and definitely something we need to keep an eye on as this whole story develops. Which brings us to part 3, 3 possible Gemini futures and what happens next. Looking objectively at all the evidence we've gathered and laid out in this explainer today, we can map out a few potential paths forward for Google. Let's look at the options without jumping to any wild, unconfirmed conclusions. So here are 3 distinct possibilities the current evidence could point to. Future 1. Gemini 3.5 Pro launches very soon, having taken that extra time to really polish its coding and reasoning, and it competes fiercely as a top-tier flagship. Future 2. It eventually launches, but it kind of gets overshadowed, right? The newer, faster Flash models end up receiving all the real strategic attention moving forward. Or Future 3. The delay ultimately becomes irrelevant because Google shifts the roadmap entirely, maybe skipping ahead and making a future generation, like a Gemini 4, the bigger strategic focus much sooner than we all expected. Now again, it is crucial to note that Google has not confirmed any of these scenarios. As we wrap up this explainer, we are just left with these undeniable facts. Google is not standing still. New Gemini models keep arriving. Agents and coding are becoming vastly more important, and the AI competition is accelerating at a terrifying pace. And yet, 3.5 Pro just remains dark. Maybe they're just taking the time they need to get it perfect. Maybe the model's being entirely rebuilt from the ground up. Or maybe, just maybe, the real story isn't about 3.5 Pro at all. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. What do you think Google is actually preparing next, behind closed doors? Do you think they should release 3.5 Pro right now, or keep improving it until it's truly ready to dominate? The most interesting part of this entire story might just be what each of us sees in the evidence. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating topic.